Okay, next part of the data analysis, we are doing the reptiles and amphibians. So out of the 551 animal mentions, there was only actually 48 reptile or amphibian mentions. So that only makes up 9% out of all of the animals mentioned, which is the second least behind the birds. So out of the 48 total animals, we only had 17 different species, and only 4 of those 17 species were unique. So only 4 out of 17 species went unrepeated across all 27 articles. So that gives by far the lowest percentage of unique species, with only 23% of the species unrepeated. That means 77% of the species mentioned were repeated at least once across all of the articles, which is the highest percent out of everything. So 48 animal types, 17 different species, and only 4 unique different species. The first out of our top appearances is the Indian purple frog. This strange looking frog with 7 appearances out of the 48 different animal mentions. He came up quite a lot. Next up in second, we have the axolotl with 6 appearances. Now, this one, I feel like, is a little bit undeserved. I feel like the axolotl, at least now, is a fairly common animal that most people know about. It's become pretty famous on the internet, and yes, I love them. They are cute, they are weird, but I feel like at least most people have heard, at the very least in passing, of the axolotl before. I don't really think that they deserve to be mentioned this many times in articles that are supposed to be animals you've never heard of, but that's just my opinion. Next up, we have the glass frog, another, I think, decently well-known one, but not nearly as well-known as the axolotl. Out of the 48 animal mentions, it came up 5 separate times, and yeah, I can see it. Like, he's a weird little dude. Like, you can see his organs. So there's that. And then for fourth, we actually have a 3-way tie between the bush viper, the giant soft-shell turtle, and the Sicilian, a type of salamander, actually, that in almost every article that it came up in, which was 4, actually, for all 3 of these, they all got 4 mentions, it was called the penis worm, or the penis snake, despite it not being a snake. Gotta say, these articles did my man a little bit dirty here, but all 3 of those had a 3-way tie with 4 mentions each. Now, like I said, the axolotl I think got too many mentions, but what I think did not get enough mentions is a different salamander, the giant salamander, which was only mentioned twice out of all of the articles, but I think it should have been mentioned more. Also, trypophobia warning coming up. I also think that it was criminal that the Pipa Pipa toad, or the Suriname toad, was not mentioned even once on here. It did not come up at all, and I think that it's deserving of some other ones, purely based on how fucking weird it is. I think that the Pipa Pipa toad deserves some justice and at least 1 mention on one of these articles, but yeah. The reptiles and amphibians were very high in repeats. Again, there was only 4 that were not repeated at all. So yeah, they were mentioned more than birds, but they also were repeated quite often, and the axolotl did skew that a bit, I think, and it should have been lower on the list.